Welcome everyone to the next in the series replacing Conquest of Elysium for the time being. This is Warlock, Master of the Arcane. And as silly as it may sound to you, this is a 4X game. A 4X strategy, a 4X strategy game. Turn-based, of course. Exploration, exploitation, extermination, and whatever the fourth X was, I don't remember. I'm actually trying right now, and I can't remember. I am your host, BrainBoy20. And let us begin. There's much to talk about. Now, this game has 5 difficulty settings. Relaxed, which is incredibly easy, as you can see by its very clever names right here. Relaxed, what is a strategy game? Casual, sure, I've heard about strategy games. Note how it's an elf. Normal, I have played a few strategy games in my time. Normal isn't normal. Challenging, I cringe not from a challenge. Impossible, I'm a strategy genius, bring on your burst. Since I've never tried this on Impossible, yet I've also played this 3 times on normal and gotten to positions where I was guaranteed to win. Eventually, if not immediately. I'm going to try this on challenging for the first time, and you'll be seeing whether or not I win or lose. Now, there are 4 victory conditions, all of which will be activated during this time. Defeat the Great Mages, Thinly Veiled Conquest victory, defeat an Avatar, which will be explained in time, cast the Unity spell, your generic technological victory, and capture 50% of Holy Grounds, which will be explained in time as well. World configuration. I'm going to do my absolute favorite configuration. It may not be the most efficient, but I like it. We're going to be doing a huge world. Mostly because my computer can handle it, and I like having room to expand while making sure my enemies also have room to expand, so they might actually propose a challenge. As on normal, they are completely terrible. I kid you not. Normal difficulty is no challenge for me, so I may as well try a harder one. For the first time. Then there are 4 different land types. The Great Land, what is an ocean, supercontinent, I shouldn't have to explain this, continents. I'd consider this to be the generic land type, but I don't remember what the preset is. A supercontinent is effectively surrounded by land. It's surrounded by ocean, I'm guessing. I don't remember if I played on that or not. But while it's surrounded by oceans, there's very few islands. I would assume that almost all lands are interconnected. This would probably be the most balanced, and this one, of course, is the highest land to ocean ratio. What? What am I talking about here? Ocean to land ratio. Yes, I think we got that correct. And as for this, we will have maximum Great Mage rivals and maximum additional worlds. This will be explained in time. I don't feel the need to explain this. Now, as for these 2 options down here, Flat World and Cylindrical World, the 2 choices here determine what the map will act like as you discover it. A cylindrical world means it curves in on itself. You can't go up. Like, say this. You have your natural tundra / wintry zone to the 2 poles, but you can't go from, say, go straight north and then suddenly appear on the south end of the world. However, on a cylindrical world, you can always go east to west. Wrong way around, BrainBoy. West to east, or east to west. A flat world is effectively a square. You can't do any fancy maneuvers like surrounding them. If you control the western half of the world belongs to you. Whereas in a cylindrical world, there's no such thing as, okay, you control the western half, I control the eastern half. It's what section of the world do you control, and how can you manage it. Now, aside from all that boring world configuration, to try to help you understand how this game goes, since this game lacks a tutorial, we have our many great mages, which also means plenty of reading. If you don't care, I think for once I'm going to try and figure out how to leave one of those markings where you could just click anywhere on the screen and skip ahead. Not anywhere on the screen, a section of the screen clearly highlighted, where you can just skip ahead to the customization, as I'm not a big fan of what everyone sets up here. But I'm going to be now reading the entire biographies of the great mages, for those who are interested and too lazy to read on their own. And in case you like hearing my voice. Biography. Mirabellus the Hat. The head of the Mages Guild, Mirabellus Card, more often known as the Hat, is infamous for his unchallenged leadership of the Council of Great Mages. That alone speaks highly of him, for such a post is envied by all, and only the most powerful and wisest of mages, a master of both magic and diplomacy, could keep such a position for any length of time. But Mirabellus seems so easily to get what he wants, with such elegant simplicity that other mages sometimes call him the Hit, from the overall description of everything by Master Alphus Bumblegate. There are many references here. And I'll have to explain the races after all this as well. Biography of Anna the Benign. Nobody can say precisely how long Anne the Benign has walked the world, or even how long she has been High Priestess of Agrella, the goddess of life. But all have heard of her numerous deeds of kindness, and how she has helped the people of Ardania through the trouble. They say she is blessed with the divine grace of life, and that a single touch of her hand is enough to restore sight to the blind, bring a paralyzed man to his feet, and even breathe life back into the dead. A single word from her lips can bring a heavy harvest in a year of blight. Biography of Nicholas Frost. Nicholas Frost is the High Priest of the Temple of Cold, and a man of generous nature, kind heart, and cold mind. Under his leadership, during the Trouble, the Temple of Cold gained great popularity, which is no mean feat given that his temple enjoys the blessings of no god. Perhaps because of this, Nicholas himself became the symbol of cold. Each year during midsummer holidays, he is seen in the cities of Ardania, dressed in his sheepskin coat and carrying a bag full of gifts. He gives children lollipops, icicles in the shape of different animals, and makes summer skating rinks and sledding runs. But don't think for a moment that such amusements are the extent of his powers, for he bears the title of Great Mage, and as many of his enemies know all too well, Nicholas Frost can freeze not only lollipops. Biography of Grand Librarian. Seriously? That's your name? Priests of Daros see knowledge as power, and because such power doubles in force when striking from concealment, they are in a habit of hiding it well. Even the very name of the Grand Librarian, High Priest of Daros, God of Order and Knowledge, is scarcely heard whispered in the darkest corners of Ardania. More widely known is that the Grand Librarian never hesitates to demonstrate his magical strength, and never denies his wish to establish a new order in Ardania. The order, he expects, shall be founded on the principles of greater good, knowing your place, and an unquestioning subjugation to the higher mind. Biography of Elpirister the Eternal. Yes, I don't know how to pronounce that name. Be quiet. At the time, Oh, come on, really? At the time, many was disappointed that the death of Elpirister the Eternal, former head of the Mages Guild, didn't simply put an end to the matter. His enemies hurried to proclaim him a heretic, while the living lamented that he didn't die as he should, and the undead complained that he didn't become a lich as he should. But such rash proclamations were confined to the backroom talks and rare, carefully written criticism in the newspapers at the time. For El Priorister, who while alive had become one of the great mages of Ardania, had become even more powerful after his death, and now could quite easily lay claim to the title of the Greatest. Biography of Empress. After the suppression of the Conclave's rebellion against the last great king, many rebellious priests were exiled from the kingdom, but many of them later returned upon hearing of the disappearance of the king. The former high priestess of Crypta, sister of Sania Sacrificios, foremost among them. Upon her return, she won back her title in a short but brutal duel, took upon herself the name the Empress, and began to pursue a new policy which she called sacrificial cleansing. Soon enough, the rule of such a determined high priestess would give fruit, and the Temple of Crypta returned to its former grim greatness and terrifying fate. Excuse me. Biography of King Lich V. Many assume that the number 5, after the name of this king, means that there were 4 other Lich kings before him, but that is something of a misconception, for there has been only one King Lich, and the number instead represents how many times he has been resurrected. It is in part of a sort of warning to his enemies, a reminder that the vengeance of an undead king can never be entirely avoided, and if anyone considers that King Lich's unparalleled skill in magic, it becomes rather obvious why he has so few enemies. Biography of Jacques. No one can claim to know much about this great mage. None know who he is, none has ever seen his face, and no one claims to know from whence he comes. And no man can claim to know the limits of his power, but there are quite a few rumors and speculations about him. Someone has heard that he is a former advisor of the Great King, or that he is even the missing Great King himself, or that he is the avatar of Lunord, the very embodiment of the spirit of Lunord's magic. But the only thing that can be said with certainty are that his name is Jacques, and he is the chosen mage of Lunord, the god of the night. Seriously, my head's trying to translate this into proper English immediately. I know they're trying to go for a ye olde feel, but they could have at least corrected some of the misspellings and errors. Biography of King Rat. I don't know what L means. Extra large 11? What? 10? I don't know what the Roman numeral L is. I've forgotten. No? Okay, it's clear that it's numerical, but I can't figure that out. Anyway, let's continue. King Rat of the Random Number has gained his place in the Council of the Great, following his father, King Rat of the Random Number -1, who had in turn inherited the title after King Rat Random Number -2, and so on back to the first great mage, King Rat the 20th. Like all of his famous ancestors before him, Rat the Random Number would most often come to council meetings accompanied by a great and pompous troop of his brothers, cousins, and nephews. This was, as he would say, to prepare a worthy heir and provide him with a proper knowledge of diplomatic etiquette. And like all his ancestors before him, Rat the Random Number liked to finish each of his council speeches with the phrase, "Ardania will be mine! Mine, 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 mine!" The third race, if you have been paying attention down here. Biography of Sol de Torvega. Sol de Torvega is the son of Basilio de Torvega, the infamous mage who had challenged the High King and Lunord himself, in hopes of gaining the powers of the God of Night, that he might rule over all Ardania. He failed in this, and he along with all of the Torvega clan were cast out of the kingdom, and their names cursed by Lunord, but Sol de Torvega had no wish to die an known Outlander lord, so he offered his services to Helia, Lunorn's greatest foe, and she accepted his proposal. Sol de Torvega has since become the High Priest of Helia, and now he and his fellow werewolves are among the most trusted and most dangerous servants of the Goddess of the Sun. Biography of Ashar the Wisest. When the Great King signed the edict granting monsters rightful citizenship in the Kingdom of Ardania, Ashar the Wisest, the first shaman of Grumgar, availed himself of the new opportunities and quickly became a member of the Conclave of High Priests, and at the same time a member of the Council of Mages. During the Trouble, he improved his position by becoming the first to proclaim himself a great mage of Ardania, and refused to bow to either the King's deputy or to the Conclave. His envious enemies call him a traitor, but even they must concede that Ashar would not have achieved these things had he not only been known the wisest, but also the strongest of the mages. These spells will make more sense in due time, as well as these perks. Biography of Tendril, son of Vendril. In the 15th summer of the Troubles, the northern foothills trembled with the mighty roar. Thus Tendril, son of the legendary destroyer of Ardania, the two-headed dragon, Vendril, first announced his appearance. Tendril was quick to conquer all the northern domains of the former Great King. Almost immediately thereafter, he was invited to join the ranks of the Great Mages and given a vote on their Great Council. It seems that Tendril was not satisfied with this honor, for it is now clear that he covers only one title, Ruler of Ardania. And we are now finished. Now as for these portraits mean absolutely nothing, these perks mean absolutely nothing, the race means absolutely nothing, and the color means absolutely nothing. I can take any one of these, and it will only determine how I look. And I have only one in mind. I shall take King Lich. That is my new name, and if you're wondering why K's suddenly appeared out of nowhere, it's only because I have a problem with me holding down my speech button. And now let's customize everything, because A, I don't care much for these, and I'd like to make sure. And the biography doesn't make sense. I don't remember if there was a way to change that or not, but ah well. Not going to go with pre-generated. First things first, race, undead will remain the same. Color, let's see if I can find something more distinct. Blue. I like blue. It's dark enough, so it might be distinct on the map. Now for perks and spells, I've tried managing this before. In all honesty, I think starting off with any spells is completely worthless. Unfortunately, I'm trying to think if there was something I could even take here. I don't even know why I showed you that. Actually, no, there's a better way. Yeah. BrainBoy is an idiot. Trust me. Right. Here's how it works. You have several perks here. These perks provide permanent benefits. Well, you can call them permanent, but some are more temporary than others, and some are completely worthless based on the race, right? Every race is different, requiring different needs amongst 3 resources in order to maintain full operation. For the perks for your Great Mage, there are Treasury. You start off with 100 extra gold. Value of this, very debatable. Mana Vault for 2 points. The numbers here represent how many points are required to utilize this. Gives 100 mana off from the start. Again, debatable if this is actually useful, unless you're planning on casting tons of spells within half a second, in which case you might as well have a good spell to use. Magnate. Value of this is better than Treasury. That says give 100 gold. However, this means you're producing 10 gold no matter what. Every turn, every game, you will always have this benefit, which could be nice depending on what you're building towards. Researcher. it improves the amount of which you research by. The value of this, in my opinion, is also debatable along with everything else, entirely because of this and this alone. You get more than enough structures amongst your respective races, and more than enough special resources to completely nullify this. This is only a minor footnote. In the early game, it could give you lots of spells that you wouldn't have access to more quickly. However, a good Civilization player would be able to easily outdo this benefit. I myself am a moderate one. I won't consider myself perfect at the game, but I would consider myself better than average. He says, Trader. Unlike the other two, which gives a set amount of gold, this one is always useful. Every city, your entire gold amount will be amplified by 20%, or the overall total of gold you gain is amplified by 20%. Therefore, you always gain 120% of what you are supposed to gain, or there are many numbers that factor into it, which may as well be 120% of what you're originally meant to gain. This could make many cities profitable where otherwise they would be on a shortfall. With how I play this, and if the AI is not better than before, this should be no problem for me. Farmer. Production of food is 20% higher. The three resources are mana, food, and gold, if you haven't figured this out by now. And the same as Trader, except food is less important in my opinion as I'm playing undead, and, well, skeletons don't necessarily need meat on their bones, now do they? Conjurer, incredibly useful for the race I'm playing. We need mana. Archmage, invaluable. If you're not going with this, you're stupid. In my honest opinion, you're stupid. This casting speed is very useful. It gives you an edge in the long run, as you'll be able to cast more spells as time goes on, and with the stockpiles of mana, that should not be a problem in the slightest with casting. And I'm not even aware of how long this has been recording, so I might not even be able to get to the map, but I might as well explain everything first. So, your casting speed determines how many spells you can cast per turn, and how much over casting happens. And I clicked on this again, which actually made me unselect it. And then Instructor, all of your units gain 1 experience point per turn. There are certain structures which circumvent the need of this, as they give the 1 experience per turn bonus anyway, but this allows you to level up your troops faster, and leveling up your troops costs nothing while giving them perks in combat that they wouldn't otherwise have. So Instructor could be useful depending on how you look at it and how you actually play your game. And with the way I play, it'd probably be good. Now, the spells. These spells are the way you directly interact with the world beside your civilization. As you can see, they all have a casting timer, a cost. The footnote there means in your own territory, which, if you've ever played a Civ game before, you should understand what territory is. And if you don't understand what territory is, you'll see in about 5 seconds. But damage, 5 elemental magic. The different damage types as well, which you have to take into account. Lesser Shadow Bolt, which I'm starting off from the beginning just because it does so much damage and so few things are actually immune to death magic. Except for one. Hint hint, I'm playing that race. However, it costs more mana, has a casting time of 1 turn. Which could be a negative, but I'm taking Archmage and Conjurer, which basically makes it so spells become very easy to cast. Lesser Heal, useless, as if you look at the footnotes, you'll see why it's useless to me. Lesser Weakness, it's useful. It's a Bane. You'll understand more about Banes later when we get into real combat against Great Mages, which I assure you is going to happen the way some AI play. And now for the greater spells that you can start with. I'll just let you look at all of them, there's really no point to explaining them. This is also a hex-based, turn-based strategy if I haven't already explained this. I apologize. And I'll probably have a skip for this as well, but I don't think you're going to be skipping much anyway. I think this is already going to run over the time limit, meaning, too bad, you're not going to actually see much of a civ game right away. But, hey, I need to explain something. Now, another thing to explain here, you can also summon units. Summoning units does not mean for a set time period, although you can always disband them. When you summon a unit, it remains permanently unless you yourself disbands it. This is for Great Mage summons only. There is a difference if you have a character unit in the world itself that is not the Great Mage that tries to summon something, which you'll see the differences of. Basic Dispel removes 1 Bane, or 1 Curse. And now the favors, as there's a God's Favor wheel as well, but it's not going to be as big of a problem right away, plus you'll be seeing what I'm avoiding right away. Summons bears. Don't know what to say about this. Now, if I remember correctly, 2 things here. Undead have access to 2 gods to build temples for. The 2 gods are Crypta and Chrome, if I remember correctly. I could be completely wrong, but we'll be seeing it as we're starting the game to see our starting position now. That, and I'm also needing to see if I need to lower the graphics settings at all, or if I'm perfectly fine with this huge world. Our starting position. You may think, based on the minimap and how much space we occupy, that it's small. Well, like Civilization, this game also has the expanding map feature. As you locate more and more, as you go further and further away from your base, your minimap also expands to cover that. We start off with Mournbell, our current city. We have different terrains, which of course provide different movement effects and different buffs, depending on what you're working at the time. Like any 4X strategy game. Unfortunately, we didn't have the best start. I've had much better for what we are, as the food production is effectively worthless until a bit later in the game when we start getting people that actually need it. Otherwise, everything here looks okay. Now, to start off, we're going to need to set up some building here at our main home base of Mournbell. And what I think I'm going to be doing is building a mana farm. As you can see, we don't have that much of a production. We don't have that much production of mana, and I'd like to improve that. Now, if you're wondering why are structures built on the outside, for those who are used to Civilization games, that's entirely because structures have more usage than normal. They're not just used because of a flat-out benefit. They're also the road that you use. Roads improve the distance your units can travel while on them. So this game heavily encourages the use of placing cities absolutely everywhere that you can. Now we have to select a spell to research. Do not ask me for a tech tree or what I'm teching towards. I don't know. I barely understand this tech tree at all. There's nothing here that makes sense. There's nothing here where there's the bigger picture. There's nothing here that's at all intuitive about how you tech. It's just whatever I can find that's immediately useful. That is my one gripe with this game so far, as otherwise this game's perfectly fine. So for the 5 spells we have to research from, we have Lesser Heal and Healing. I'm going to ignore those as those are effectively worthless. Fireball and Lesser Fireball. However, these two have vastly different research times and point costs. I think I might... And then Clean the Land, which restores any landscape to its original state. Actually, after playing multiple Civ games, I think I can come to one conclusion here. Multiple Civ games of this, I mean. Here's the one conclusion. Each one of these is randomly pre-generated, so you don't actually know what spells you're researching. That's kind of silly on my bit, but there are certain spells people would probably tech towards immediately. So let's go with Lesser Fireball, because you research it in 3 turns and it's a good offensive spell. So skeletons can be recruited here. We can either recruit skeleton warriors and skeleton archers. They have an upkeep of 1 gold and 1 mana per turn, which is also taken out of how much you produce automatically, so the numbers you see here are the actual numbers, as you can tell. Here are the 5 resources. Now this one's slightly covered up by the frames per second bar, but it's gold, and I start off with a moderate amount. Excess food you produce is converted into gold at a rate of 1/2 of the food per gold, so producing food's not that terrible. Mana is mana, and research points also makes sense. Now I have 2 units that have orders. In most normal Civ games, you want to protect your main structure, your main citadel. You don't want to leave it undefended. In this game, you can. Every single structure in Citadel gets a free arrow shot in any direction, up to 2 spaces away. This shot is normally enough to instant kill, instantly murder, instantly maim any barbarians that come forth. However, the barbarians are not that big of a pushover, as you will hopefully see in the future. Hang on, I gotta select one of the warriors. No? Not gonna show me? Alright, fine. No. Hang on, how do I look at the information on these guys again? Oh, right-click, yes, that's what it was. Skeleton warriors. There's a lore info. I may read that later, but I don't feel like it at the moment and my throat's killing me. Now, I will explain how the combat works before we actually begin our first turn. In fact, I don't think I'm going to even begin the first turn this episode, as of right now, everything's okay. As it is, I'm just using this episode to explain everything, show what our starting location looks like, and maybe detail a few plans. Every unit has a sight radius. The sight radius is determined... Well, you take the first... I think it's the first hex and the second set of hexes that surround the unit, and that's how far they can see? Or does it include the first hex? No. It takes... No, a sight range of 2 will only see the hexes immediately surrounding it, so as in the 6 surrounding hexes of my current skeleton warrior. For combat, there's a distinction between melee and ranged. Of course, ranged attackers can make attacks at a distance unless they're best placed behind your own lines, so the enemy can't hit them, as they're normally not the best defenders. And of course, as hit points drop, so does the damage you can perform compared to the enemy. And you have movement, which there are certain determining types of movement as well that you have to take into effect. Here's where the true bit comes into this game, the resistances. To every single type of weapon that you have access to, there's a resistance for it. In this case, it turns into what the damage dealt to you is. In the case of skeletons, they take next to no missile damage, which it makes sense. Arrows will simply go right through their armor, but they're not going to be hitting any internal organs or otherwise. Melee, they're brittle-boned, but they don't feel pain, so melee is average for them. Life magic, they're undead. Life is naturally opposed to undeath, as undeath is a perversion of life. Death magic, how could death hurt a skeleton? Spirit magic, I don't know how to describe that. Elemental magic, basically fireballs. Fireballs, lightning bolts, and... I'm trying to think of something else that's elemental magic, but I can't recall any. But as people level up, you'll see those damage types change in time. And then as for the skeleton archers, they have the exact same stat line, except they have range damage and can fight at a distance and are slightly weaker. Now, open diplomatic relations. We know none of our great mages as of right now. My great mages could be any of my opponents, I will not know of them. If I click on a Great Mage after I've discovered them, I will know their perks, their blessings and banes that are applied to the Great Mage themselves, and anything else about them. This is what I alluded to earlier, the God's Wheel. This means what the gods do. Are they in my favor or are they against me? If they're against me, they're more likely to send enemies and negative effects against me. If they're with me, they're more likely to provide me assistance in the form of units that are available to them, or spells, which I can research. Undead are of course naturally accrued to the goddess of death, Crypta, meaning I'll be moving away from Agrella. There are many ways to get favor with a god. You can't do it normally, as in just you can't naturally gain favor with one. You have to work for the favor and pick and choose what you're going to do. In this form of conscious thought, you can build temples and shrines on holy grounds, which is why holy grounds go hand in hand with avatars. Now of course there's an upper limit to the amount of favor you can gain with a god. That is 100. However, if you ever reach 100, that's where the secondary victory condition, killing the avatar of a god, comes into play. If you ever get to -100 on the relations meter with any god, they will send their avatar against you at your main city. You have to kill this avatar to win, but the avatar is also guaranteed to wreak destruction and havoc. In this case, since I'm naturally attuned to death, and the Goddess of Life has tons of life magic, she'll be destroying my armies piecemeal, easily. So I want to maintain on my best, it'd be in my best interest to not go too heavily into Crypta's investiture yet, as there are some units from Crypta I really enjoy. You know what, I might as well go on a bit more. What time is it? Might as well go on a little bit more and show you our surrounding region. Now of course there are resources. All resources are clearly defined in the map. There's nothing special you have to do to locate them. But we might as well go on exploring. Oh, so I was right when I had to say that it was the surrounding area. Now of course, we got to my favorite position. I already discovered we are at the top of the map. This is my favorite position to be in, aside from the bottom of the map. This means there are no enemies to watch at the top. My expansion will only be in the direction of this island, when I can actually build skeletal settlers, which are our form of expansion. So I'll only be expanding in one direction, meaning I only need to bring my forces in that direction. So let's explore in this direction and see what we can find. Now as you can see, moving through two structures only took one movement point from him. Each structure divides the movement in half whenever you walk across it. As you can see, I've spotted nothing of the barbarians as of right now. So as for my first turn, and all the explanations, I think we'll call this an episode, unless I go back and suddenly realize I'm horribly under time, but I doubt that's going to happen. So anyway, hope you all enjoyed the setup phase of this series. Hope you all enjoy the series in the future. And actually a small side note, in case you're still interested, this was not the original series I had planned for this. I had originally planned the series Command and Conquer Generals, a real-time strategy game. Unfortunately, I tried to install a patch, and the game couldn't understand the patch or couldn't overwrite something. So when I uninstalled it, well, the thing broke. Now the disk reads as if the game was installed, but it's not. There are no files on it, but the patch I think is still somewhere on my system, and I have to remove it, and that would take a lot more work than it's worth for this, when I have this easily available Civilization game, which I guarantee you anyone could find interest in. Anyway, like I was saying before, hope you all enjoyed this series. This has been Let's Play Warlock, Master of the Arcane, with me, BrainBoy20, and I'm signing off.